Unkosi kubumbana insimbi yesithupha ekuseni tilishumi nesihlanu solo-ke inyanga yekucala eminyakeni lomusha umnyaka wa-2024. A very good morning to you and yours lapho uvuka khona. Libito lami nguSifiso Xumala ngihambe ngedva ngihamba nemfoveni. Ngiyethemba ukuthi kokucala utawusho ukuthi nje welcome back Mnguni.
Welcome back Mnguni. How are you?
Doing very well. Can't complain. Happy to be back. It's going to be a year of abundance. Tinhlangothini letine ngokandaba ushilo. Machitha libutho nesibonge nje nemvula. Kutheni nivele nangemambala inala itawushaywa emakhaya. Sabiyela nje emakhaya. Delibutho lisabiyela khona emakhaya. Sithembe ukuthi basa emasimini emajaha kuyawusebenta nangemambala itawushaywa inala emakhaya. Ngumnyaka lo mhle kakhulu.
Noma kanjani Mnguni? Simvuselena nemakhaya. Sithemba ukuthi niphilile. Thank you for joining us. Sithemba ukuthi nibe nempela somvo lenhle nale busisekile sasibuyile futhi seyishayile insimbi esithupha ekseni lokusho kona kucala kwehlelo lethu lomhla ekseni. You can also watch this episode on our YouTube channel Eswatini TV. Tilishumi nesihlanu ke so vele yagijima umnyaka wa 2024 kude masinyane Sifiso stabe siku February njengoba nje nangu January akhombisa ukuthi uyagijima masinyane.
Kusagijinywa nje lengunakile ukuthi dinenkinto vele digijinyelwako but nyalo indzaba yesikolo ngiyababona abatali ukuthi hayi yayiba uyabona ke apply nala tikolweni nawuthi wendlula ngesikolo uyabona ngilo uphethe ifayela lakhe uhamba nemvana yakhe lokuthembisa ukuthi nangemambala nasehlangothini lasesikolweni sitawubona abantwana abafunza ngekutimisela sibone imiphumela lemihle kungasiphindi nakule sibone kwendeka nakuma exams nje. I'm quite confident ngeminyaka wa 2024 ukuthi taba ngomnyaka lotaba mhle kutonke inhlangothi.
Definitely mbukeli lomhla on the show. It's a beautiful Monday morning. Sitaba sinebeltiko letempilo namuhla nje tiko letempilo lisukumisa lucwaningo lolutawubuka ukuthi linganani lizenga lokuthelelana tifo letingathathelwana nokuthi yini lebanga letifo leti tifaya khathi ke boshukela kanye naletinye tifo letiko ke libika ukuthi lizenga lemaswati lanaye shukela liyenyuka. Itiko lagcina nje kwendalo licwaningo eminyakeni wa 2014 kanti kumele ukuthi lendiwe njalo eminyakeni lesihlanu ilandzelana. Tisebeni ke tetempilo titawube kusukela lamuhla diphuma tivakashela emakhaya lapha eveni tendalo lucwaningo lihlolo ukuthi ngibani la ekhaya mhlambe lonesifo lesingathathelwana. Sitabe sikhulumisana na NCT coordinator etiko letempilo Raymond Shabangu lomhla 6:30.
Kanti-ke sitaphinze siticocise tindzaba temidlalo nensathelo yemsakato yato temidlalo Linda Master Dlamini. Sawucala njengenjwayelo-ke sibuketa lapha ekhaya Premier League local football chubekile-ke kule mpelasonto. Some of the games which I had the pleasure to watch live even myself belapha-ke Mavuso siyibonile iMbabane Swallows, sayibona iHighlanders, sayibona iMoneni Pirates nayo iDenver Sundowns. Two displays, beautiful, brilliant performances from ongakela masayidi lawa. Both games agcineke kuma 1-1 draw. Kodwa siyatfola ukuthi iRoyal Leopard ihlulekile-ke kushaya iNsingizini Hotspurs kule mpelasonto. Lokuyente ukuthi-ke isite iMbabane Swallows ngoba kule draw leyitfolile kule mpelasonto beyibuka ukuthi iyalapha ku number 2. Kanti-ke iRoyal Leopard iwinile ngabe ichubekise iSwallows le emuva emisileni kubo position 4 position 3, which has been an interesting weekend kuyona i-local football. Kushawa nje kwemagoli lehlale nato tinsathelo temsakato temidlalo lapha ekhaya tikukhutsata ukuthi nakungenela amagoli siyabana kokuthuthuteka ukuthi nangemambala sibukela ibhola lemnanzi lapha ekhaya. Do you want to talk about Pupu banele FIFA longenile nge-first half wayishintsha igame yayo iHighlander and a couple of other players were instrumental in that particular game. But ke siyabona ukuthi ne-Africa Cup of Nations sevele iqalile Egypt ne-Mozambique draw 2-2, Nigeria Equatorial Guinea, which was a brilliant game again. Nayo siyafuna kuyikhulumisa. We'll also look at other football leagues across the world. Nakufika ke yena Linda Master Dlamini later on the program.
Alright, sisibuke nje na deal ethamba imbili kumaphephandaba lomhla ekseni. Saqala sibuke Eswatini, e-Times of Eswatini this Monday morning kuthi ngitiphle thamba imbili. Kanti kuleto letihamba imbili over 1,500 queue for Bushiri's Miracle Water. Over 1,000 congregants gathered at the grand opening of the Enlightened Christian Gathering Church's Wealth Transfer Service, which was founded by Prophet Shepherd Bushiri. Kanti letinye thamba embili, education stakeholders says government blundered in 4-year HECSC program. They say program was introduced prematurely and a disaster is waiting to happen. More on page 2. Kanti letinye thamba embili, the Prime Minister says do things differently and find stimulating solutions. Kanti kuletinye, Kauzela's son co-accused claims CJ is interfering with file. Kanti kuletinye thamba embili, pedestrian, 2 rescuers killed in 4-vehicle accident.
Yeah, from September now you got your share of that miracle water. Siqhubeke sibuke temidlalo ku Times of Eswatini lomhla ekseni. Police side miss out on top spot as Nsingizini recruit slays Leopard. Zimbabwe sensational new signee Nyasha Chintuli was the hero in the 3-1 win. Esukwini ke la idolo ake nakudlala yona Nsingizini Hotspurs ishaya iRoyal Leopard. Kanti ke kulenye indzaba Sihlangu Summit, Coolcat calls for transparency. Azulwini football legend William Coolcat Shongwe feels there is a lack of transparency at national team Sihlangu. Indzaba ke le hamba embili, AFCON Nigeria held Egypt, Mozambique draw. Following the game ke lapha ekhaya itolo sibone my emotions ahigh kakhulu kunatithombe letvelakho kumbabane Highlanders lebese ikwatele kakhulu ke Rafaela Sanele Ntimane emva kwekuthi idraw neMoneni Pirates. Indzaba lenye lesitayikhulumisa kabanzi nakufika inzatheli yemsakato lenda Master Dlamini.
Moving on to the Eswatini Observer, letihamba embili, over 1,500 rush for Bushiri's water ECG to have their hands washed with water that was to said been sacred and prayed for by Prophet Bushiri. Kanti kuletinye thamba embili, war over passengers as SA Kumbi owners block shuttles. Shuttle was attacked, fined and harassed by SA cross-border taxi patrol. Buletinye thamba embili, 3 killed, 4 critical in horror crash, and parents say maintain top-up fees.
Kutemidlalo, Zimbabwean striker Nyasha Chintuli hits 3 on debut. Ubenje stunning kuleyo game yakhe yekuqala badlalela yona Nsingizini Hotspurs against Royal Leopard. Kulenya Rangers ruin 7 Dreams party. Lapho khona ke kube bittersweet moment for yona 7 Dreams after they were handed a 1-0 defeat by Peaks Peak Rangers on the day they were to be officially awarded their first round incentive. Salah saves Egypt, blushes. Mohamed Salah scored in the dying stages to help Egypt avoid a shock defeat against Mozambique as the two nations drew 2-2 yesterday evening. Letogele thamba embili ku Eswatini Observer kutemidlalo.
Nasibuke Eswatini Daily News, tihloko lethamba embili, Prime Minister highlights key areas to stimulate economy. 2024 is a year of success, abundant harvest, nekusho kwenkosi, and the nation has been warned about a fake Deputy Prime Minister's food grant program.
Temidlalo ku Eswatini Daily News, the leading headline, outstanding Chintuli torments Royal Leopard. The new Zimbabwean striker grabs a hat-trick on his debut as Nsingizini Hotspurs trash Royal Leopard 3-1 at King Sopuza II Memorial Stadium on Sunday. Another one, Birds Bull held to draws in MTN Premier League on Sunday. South African refereeing has regressed is another leading headline. Temidlalo.
It's 8 minutes after 6. Let's take a break. Nasibuya sithatha indaba Eswatini.
Umsakato wetithombe iEswatini TV utibophelele kuhlonipha nekulandzela umgomo wetekusakata loweluswe libandla letekuchumana eveni.
Ngephansi kwalomgomo sitimisele kusakata tindzaba letenteka ngaleso sikhatsi, tindzaba letite magama laqosheme, letitsembekile, letitsintsa tonke tinhlangothi naletisebaleni.
Kusukela kutepolitiki, tetemphilo, tekulima, tetinkantolo, netemhlaba wonke jikelele, siniletsela tindzaba njengoba tinjalo ngaleso sikhatsi letenteka ngaso.
Kanzi kulomsakato siphindze sikulethele lonke luhlobo lwetemidlalo kusuka emidlalweni welibhola letinyawo kuye emidlalweni ledlalelwa ematafuleni kanye naleto letiqhamuka ngaphandle kwakuleli.
Leti tindzaba lowutiletselwa ngumsakato wetithombe iEswatini TV.
Bongosi asiphindze sinamukele ehlelweni imizuzu lelishumi kubumbene insimbi yesithupha ngesikhathi ke sitawe thabela tindzaba tesiswati. Uqalile umhlangano wemalanga amathathu wetindvuna tembuso ehotela le-Royal Villas eZulwini. Umhlangano lohlose kubuka ukuthi intuthuko yetinhlangothini letahlukene temnotfo welive ingalethwa kanjani. Kanti ke lo mhlangano ungenelwe nabomabhalane labakhulu bematiko lehlukene.
Libandla letindvuna tembuso leliholwa ngumhlonishwa ndvunankulu Russell Dlamini lihlangene ehotela le-Royal Villas lapho khona libuka live ukuthi lingathuthukiswa kanjani kule minyaka lesihlanu letako. Njengoba lamuhla kulilanga lekucala letinye tindzaba letitawutekwa indzaba yekwakha umkhombandlela wekusebenta kwahulumende weminyaka lengu-30 kuya ku-50. Hulumende ke kuleli langa utawuphindza abuke ukuthi engabe imali lanayo etingungwini takhe ingakanani nekuthi tintfo tekusebenta tona tingakanani. Lokhu ke kutawusita kwekuthi hulumende akhone kwenta imisebenti yakhe njengoba imisebenti lemikhulu seyivele icalile kuletinye tindzawo njengekwakha imigwaco kanye nekwakha emadamu. Lokhulumela hulumende Alfios Ncumalo uyenaba ngaletinye tindzaba letitekwako kulo mhlangano.
Kwanyalo nje sisabuka emuva lokuthi letikhilikisi tibe kuphi. Yini lesenda silwe nebuphuya bungapheli. Yini lesenda umnotho wethu ukhule unyonyobe. So siyakholwa ukuthi by Wednesday mati phela umhlangano wetinduna sinibita futhi kutolalela ukuthi induna nkulu esiveni. Kuyabe konke sekusemseleni wako sekuhamba ngendlela yakhona.
Uma yethula inkulumo yakhe yekucala ndvunankulu uvetile ukuthi kuleli plan lekusebenta kweminyaka lesihlanu lahulumende tindzaba letitawufakwa ngito tekuthi live licinisekisa kanjani ukuthi linekudla lokwanele kuphindze kubukwe ukuthi ematfuba emisebenti wona ngakhiwa kanjani kubukwe tenhlala kahle ukuthi bantfwana bomake naso sonke sive singahlala njani etindzaweni letikahle futhi letiphephile futhi netinsita tahulumende tisheshe tifike kuso sive. Njengoba lo mhlangano uphela ngalesithathu lenye indzaba letawuphindze itekwe ngiyo indzaba yekuthi engabe live leSwatini lingabakhanga kanjani bahlanyela imali kute kuthuthuke umnotfo welive. Tindvuna tembuso titawuphindze tibuke emaphakelo eminyaka timali wa 2024-2025 njengoba esati ukuthi indvuna yelitiko letemafa kubhekeke ukuthi yetfule emaphakelo enyangeni letako. Etindzabeni teSwatini TV nginginelson Dlangamandla nginasimuva Shongwe eZulwini.
Umsebenzi wekukhonka kanye ke nekufaka litiyela umgwaco waseTikhuba lotawubita imali letigidzi letingemashumi emalangeni lokungu-45 million niketwe inkampani yaka-AG Thomas. Lokhu kuvetwe indvuna yelitiko letemsebenzi lemikhulu nekutfutsa umhlonishwa sikhulu Ndlaluhlaza Ndwandwe.
Sigaba sekucala salomgwaco losuka esibhedlela lesikhulu iGood Shepherd Stegi uye endlalane enkundleni yaseMathanjeni North siphele eminyakeni lophelile ngenyanga yeLweti. Indvuna yetiko letemisebenzi lemikhulu nekutfutsa umhlonishwa sikhulu Ndlaluhlaza Ndwandwe sithi lomgwaco losuka endlalane uye kaGobolondlwa yini eTikhuba utawubita imali etigidzi letingamashumi temalangeni 45 million.
Iyo wakha umgamu longanga 7 kilometers khona. Tindleko talapho ke tawucishe tehluke kuleti lesibala ngala. Khona umsebenzi utawubita 45 million. Sizathu lesibanga lokho ngilendlela lendlela lomgwaco lo mengayo le nale quality la kata uyifaka ngoba lo silomgwaco siwakha kanjani kuba netimo letahlukahlukene letibukwa ukuthi lapha senda kanjani kubheke ukuthi awusebenzeke AG Thomas lo msebenzi loyo ngetinyanga letingu-8 ugcine ufika emaphethelweni. Sibonga hulumende nje lo msebenzi lesusebenzako hulumende cishe kule minyaka nalendlulile beka bosinika imali lelungele ukuthi ngakalitiyela lelingu-20 kilometers. So ngaleyo ndlela ke bese sikuhlukanisa ngetindzawo.
Indvuna yenkundla yaseMathanjeni North Thula Maziya ithi lo mgwaco utaba lusito lolukhulu kulesive salenkundla.
Bekuthi makunalitulu uthole ukuthi tindzawo letihambeke mhlambe nebantu ukufika etibhedlela kumsikasanyana ngoba isibhedlela esikhulu lesinaso nje iGood Shepherd le about 18 kilometers away from enkundla to iGood Shepherd. So bekubane tinamba lithu nebantu besikolo nje lithuko labo nabo nabanye abafunda ukuthi isikole semadolobheni sisekhaya boGood Shepherd. Ethiwa ekhaya boGood Shepherd nabo bangakhona ukufika nesimo semgwaqo. ngiyacabanga futhi kanjalo kusomabhizinisi uma khona kulo mgwaqo sinelithemba elikhulu lokuthi mhlambe ema-investors nawo mhlambe atawuba nayo interest ke-investa ngala ngasenkundleni juthi isimo somgwaqo lesitaba sihle kakhulu.
Indvuna iphindze yanxusa kule sive kutsi noma lo mgwaqo uta nentfutfuko sive asinake imfuyo nebantfwana emgwaqweni njengoba timoto letawuhamba ngelitubane lelisetulu uma lo mgwaqo sofakwe litiyela. Etindzabeni ye-Eswatini TV kubika Samkelisiwe Khoza nginasimuva Shongwe eMbabane.
Batawubhatalelwa ngesikhathi etikolweni bantfwana bendlunkhulu labatfola kwesekelwa ngetimali ngaphansi kwesikhwama sekubasita. Isikhwama lesingaphansi kwelihhovisi leliphini landvunankhulu. Kanti ke lokhu kuvetwe ngumabhalane lomkhulu kuleli hhovisi Melusi Masuku uma achaza kwekuthi yini lihhovisi lelitawuyenta kucinisekisa ukuthi bantfwana bendlunkhulu abatikhanzi sebacoshiwe ngenxa yokweswelakala kwetimali njengoba bekwenteka eminyakeni ledlulile.
Sile hhovisi ke leliphini landvunankhulu ngekubambisana nelitiko letemafa sende isiqiniseko sokuthi 1/3 of le mali lebhadalwa nguhulumende ye-OVC ibhadalwe nakuqala nje lenyanga lesisetikwayo yaJanuwari ukuthi nakuvulwa tikolo ibe seyingale etikolweni. Sendela lokho ukuthi labantwana bakhone ukuthi babe admitted esikolweni bakhone ukufunda. So nathi ke silihhovisi leliphini landvunankhulu asikabheki ukuthi bese siva ukuthi bantwana sebaqoshiwe sekuthiwa babhadale i-deposit noma babhadale i-top up. Sitawuchubeka sisebenzisane nelihhovisi letemafa ukuthi sende sure ukuthi at least nakuqala i-second term lo 2/3 wale mali lekufuneka ukuthi uhulumende abayibhadeli bese iphumile kutowudibambisa nato tikolo ukuthi tikhona phela kumitha leto tidzingo letiba khona tokubhadala ama-bills nekubhadala labo labaye basite esikolweni labaqashiwe.
Hulumende uqaphelisa sive ngetigangi letigebenga sive imali tibhace ngekwekuthi imali yekutfola kudla ngaphansi kwelihlelo lolichutshwa lihhovisi leliphini landvunankhulu. Hulumende watisa sive kutsi akayati leyo mali ngako-ke sive asicaphele singagebengeki njengoba letigangi tihumusha sive le mali ngelihlelo lwa-mobile money. Hulumende utsi kumanje lihhovisi leliphini landvunankhulu likhipha imali yebantfu labadzala neyalabo-ke labakhubatekile lisebentisa yena mobile money. Utsina kutawuba nemali letawunikwa sive sitawatiswa ngendlela lefanele ekhasini lahulumende netindlu tetindzaba letatiwako eveni. Lombiko uchamuka kulokhulumela hulumende Alfios Nxumalo. Kushone bantfu labatsatfu engotini yemgwaco leyenteke kaLogoba ngemgcibelo ebusuku ngesikhatsi bantfu bashayiswa timoto ngekwehlukana. Labanye baphuthunyiswe esibhedlela lapho babalapha khona.
Kube khona indvodza leneminyaka lengu-33 yakadvokolako leshayiswe imoto iHonda Fit lebeshayelwa indvodza leneminyaka lengu-31 yaseMbabane. Shothi ke lokhu bese kuyenteka ukuthi lapho khona ngoba lona loshayisekile bekahamba nalomnye wesifazane. Kwase kuba khona imoto futhi lefikako lethi itoletha lusito kulona losalimele. Bathi-ke kuleyo mzuzu basazama ukuthi basite lona sebawabidile nawo emaphoyisa asesendleleni. Kwaba khona futhi kumbe lenye imoto le ifike yasenayo iphindze ingena kuso lesigigaba lamgwaqweni kumbe sesingasho nje ukuthi kumbe ngilokuthi kumbe bekumnyama yini. Kodwa-ke lena moto ayike mina kwenteka le ngoti le. La kukhona nje ukuthi lebe bakhona bathi babonile ukuthi bekuyimoto lemhlophe. Kwase-ke sekuphindze kufika lenye nayo lebe yine bagibeli labaphose babesihlanu. Le ibe senayo yema kahle eceleni kwemgwaqo behla nabo batozama kusita phela kulona lebekasolo alelela phaphasi. Kuloko-ke basasita kuphindze kwachamuka futhi lenye futhi imoto lehlobo lePolo. Lapho khona ibe ifike ishayisa yena lo muntu lebesavela ashayisekile lebekalele phasi emgwaqweni. Yase seyiphindze ishayisa nalaba lebe bazama kusita lona lolimele phela. Kodwa-ke ngenhlahla nayo lena siyikhonile-ke kuyithola ngoba lona nje lebekayishayela lena moto yena ugcine naye ngoba uthintathintekile wahamba wamikiswa esibhedlela. Kuloko-ke kushayiseka kwalaba lebe basita kube khona-ke abantu lababili laba bese bazishiya emhlabeni le kuyindvodza lena 32 weminyaka yasendzaweni yakubhenkhosi nentombazana nayo lena 32 weminyaka yasendzaweni yasemhlaleni. Bese-ke kubo bona labo kube kunalabane shothi nje labangu-4 labalimele le sikhuluma nje babe baphuthunyiswe esibhedlela kaManzini.
Kwenabisa tindzawo tebuchwephesha pheceleti i-hub kutawulisita ke live kutfutfukisa tinhlangothi letahlukene kufaka ekhatsi tebhizinisi netebuchwephesha kubantfu labasha nesive lesemangweni. Lokhu kuvetwe ngilobuke tinhlelo tekufukamela bosomabhizinisi kaSet Coast Khumbuzo Mbuyisa.
Inhlangano yakamhlaba yetentuthuko ye-United Nations Development Programme UNDP ibambisene nelibandla lengamele tekuchumana ye-Eswatini Communications Commission kanye nenkampani lembuka kutfutfukisa bosomabhizinisi labancane iSEDCO bacale luhlelo lokwakha tindzawo tetebuchwephesha etindzaweni letisemakhaya lapho sive sitawukhona khona kwenta imisebenti leyahlukene ledzinga i-internet pheceleti i-iHub. Lobo-ke tinhlelo tekufukamela bosomabhizinisi labancane kaSEDCO Sikhumbuzo Mbuyisa uyachaza ukuthi lolu hlelo litawusebenta kanjani.
Sizama ukutargeta letindzawo letingekho edolobheni kakhulu. Ngaloko ukuthi ukhanga ukuthi bantfu labasetindzaweni letingekho edolobheni abakhona uku-accessa bo-internet kude nalama-computers. So kule iHub lomusha lotawuphumelela utawuba nelithuba lokuthi ayi-operate le iHub lapho khona sitawe sifake ema-computers. Utawuproposa tinhlelo latatenda kule iHub asebenzisa lama-computer nale infrastructure lesitabe siyibekile lapho. So basically kutawukhona kokuthi emukele bantfu labasha noma bafuna kutofunza ngetemabhizinisi batokhona kokuthi bafunze. Inkumbi yetifundvo nyalo seti-online. So ngale iHub-ke batokhona abantu labasha nabomake kokuthi bayi-access bakhone kufunza online. Kungaba kulete emabhizinisi, kungaba nasetifundweni nje. Bantu labasha emanyuvesi nyalo sebasebenzisa online kakhulu.
Wanyalo lendzawo itawuba sendzaweni yaseSpiki kanti umuntfu lomusha lofise kuchuba abuke kusebenta kwayo le iHub angatfola emaphepha eticelo etinkundleni tekuchumana tenkampani yakaSEDCO naka-SCCOM. Etindzabeni ye-Eswatini TV kubika Samkelisiwe Khoza nginasimuva Shongwe eMbabane.
Sikhulusa kuMagele ngaphansi kwenkhundla yakumthambama Chief Magele sikhathatekile ngebucala lesebanzile kuleya ndzawo cala ke bekugeca imfuyo ikakhulukati tinkhomo. Sikhuluma Magele sithi sekwanze nebantfu labangadiwa kuleya ndzawo labeta ngetinjongo tsite nembiko.
Sikhulu sendzawo yakuMagele esifundzeni saseshiselweni Chief Magele sikhathatekile ngebucala lesebanzile kuleya ndzawo bekugeca imfuyo lesekukhalisa naboke banikati bemfuyo.
Kune bantu labafika labahlala la lelive lakamagele kodwa lothola ukuthi abatiwa balima naligwayi lelikhulu lelingekho emthethweni. So bantu nje labangacontroleki ngoba indlu uma ingabati nje ungeke ubakhuthe bathini bantu labangasinebala kule ndzawo. So nje sithi asekude esiveni ukuthi abasubukele mani bangafihli bantu labangasibo kule ndzawo ngoba kuthi abahlala khona la endawo emahlathini bakha nemikhukhu. Manje inkinga lesinayo lenkulu kunemfuyo lesivele lethola ukuthi phela ngoba indzawo emadlelo la thola ukuthi ke manje lawo bekunene bese mase ingenela kuleti semtabo sithi yakagajwa tinkomo tebantu.
Uthi-ke nalaba labalima ligwayi lelikhulu bahlome ngetibhamu letinkulu khona-ke emahlathini lapho bahlala khona. Etindzabeni ngingugiyani Msebeni nasimuva Shongwe kuMagele.
Inhlangano lesambulelo setinhlangano talabo labake bagcinwa emnyango wekucondzisa timilo kuleli Southern Africa Network of Prisons ikhutsata labo labake baba ngaphansi kwalomnyango kuthi bente imisebenti leyahlukene kude bakugweme kuphindze bente bucala. Umcondzisi jikelele walenhlangano kuleli mandla mthetho akuvete lokhu ngesikhathi bayawukwenta umsebenzi webuvolontiya nalabanye labake bagcinwa kulomnyango endzaweni la kuhlanganyela khona abantwana labanetidzingo letahlukene eMbabane.
Site la kule care point yakaSACRO iSACRO lapho khona sivolontiya ngokuthi sibaheshele sibacenzele siphindze kube khona titfombo lesitihlanyelako kule ngadze yabo lapho khona baye basite bantwana labanzinzile noma labahluphekile nalabete labangakudla kuthi bete kulendzawo lena batotfola lokuya esiswini noma ethunjini.
Lokhulumela inhlangano yalabo labake bagcinwa emnyango wekucondzisa timilo kuleli Eswatini National Federation of Ex-Prisoners Mlungisi Matsenjwa uthi kuyabasita nabo kwelekelela sive.
Nasite lana site kutocucutela labantfu abakithi labala e-drop-in center kwekuthi uthi noma ngabe sowuphumile ubuye ube ngumuntu lotabamgcokwa emangweni usekele nawe ichubeke impilo iye embili.
Sharon Samuel lobukete kweluleka endzaweni lapho kuhlanganyela khona abamfana labanetidzingo letahlukene embabane iEsakro uthi basitakele kakhulu.
Leli sito belisilidzinga kakhulu ngoba kwanyalo nje bayahesha bayasicensela vele bekwenile and bekwesabeka sekungasasiyo indzawo la khona sisi sinendzawo yebantfana lena.
Inhlangano yakaSanop ithi umsebenzi wekusita sive iwenda sonke isikhathi hayi njengelilanga lekuvolontiya emhlabeni kuphela. Etindzabeni teSwatini TV kubika Nelson Dlangamandla embabane.
Komshana weti-70 yetiko leti-70 nenhlalakahle yato Mthunzi Shabangu uthi ti-70 tibowasebentisa emahhovisi alelitiko newelibandla lemlamuli weticashi neti-70 iSIMEC kubika kungabonisani kahle lokukhona emkhatsini wato ti-70 neticashi. Shabangu bekaphendvula indzaba yalomunye dzadze lobekasebenta kulesinye silahla eMalkens lotsi ucoshwe emsebentini ngenxa yekulahla kwekutigceba kwakhe lokusebentile emigcomeni yalesilaha.
Sisilo cleanako uthi wathi ufuna lokulatabuthanga ngotibi wase sowuthatha wase nakabona lapha emdustbin wabona le hairnet nakathi uphamisa le hairnet wabona kuneliphethe wabuta useliphethe lifakwe ngibandla ngalivuma mina ngathi lifakwe ngimi mina lebengicela ngicela ukuthi manje ngithole lencwadi leshoko ukuthi ngicoshiwe ngoba nami ngifuna ukuchubekela phambili nginetikolede lenginato so that ngilokhona ukuthi noma ngiyesitolo ngiyovala ukuthi uyatingicela ukuthi sikwelede sami sale sima ngikhona nekuthi ngihambe ngiyotibutela kaSimakhi ukuthi ngiyalivuma liqala ngiyalibona liphutha ngilendile base lapha emsebentini kude la silahla khona vele lamaphetsi kahle vele alahlwa kuphi nekuthi ke lendlela abangicoshe ngayo bakafaka ukuthi angi-understand ngoba angake ngenta i-verbal warning ne-return warning abakake bangendisa ne-notice nekuthi ke maybe utawusebenza kule nyanga lena vele ugcine kule sento sakho losendile kude mina labangendise kona.
Simtholile umnikati wasoke silaha lothe ungibaba efaka ukuthi kuphendula lendzaba loceleke kungaveli etithombeni kodwa ke wavuma ukuthi vele wamcosha Vuyisile. Nasimbuta ukuthi uhleti naye phansi yini wamnika i-verbal warning noma ke i-return warning noma ke kumkhulumisa ngaphambi kokuthi amcoshe utheke cha akamnikanga kuphela nje lesento saVuyisile simthukuthelisile wabona ukuthi vele akamcoshe. Simbutile ke nokuthi ukhona yini umgcoma wokulahla lokusebentile kwabodzadze wathi ukhona nasicela ke kuwubona siwushuthe wala uphetheke ngokuthi Vuyisile akendela kubonanga kona akabona ukuthi ucosheke kabi. Khomishana wetisebenti etiko leti-70 nenhlalakahle Mthunzi Shabangu semkhulumisa ngalendzaba uthe lo dzadze akaye emahhovisini aka-Labour noma ke kaSimak lakhonela kusita sive even lonke. Kanti umthetho wokucashwa kweti-70 Employment Act iminyaka wa-1980 sigaba sesithupha nombolo 37 uthi kutiphatsa kwemcashi lokubonakala kungasikahle isisebentini kute kufike esigabeni lapho siyekeliswa khona umsebenzi akukhathalekileke ukuthi sinikiwe satiso noma ke asikanikwa lesingathi phecelezi notice lokho ke kuyawuthathwa njenge-unfair dismissal. Kanti ke nombolo 38 walomthetho uthi leso sisebenzi kumele sinikwe certificate noma ke incwadi lesho lilanga lesacashwa ngalo nalisiyekele ngalo emsebentini leso sisebenzi. Ngekusho ke kwalodzadze uyile kaSimakhi lebatheke akabhale incwadi ayinike lo mcashi wakhe lekatheke sokwendile ke naloko lesokumeleke agadze imphendulo esikhatsini lesingaba malanga la7 kuyeke lo mcashi wakhe. Etindzabeni ngengiyani Msibingi Nasimuva Shongwe nasamkelisiwe Khoza eMalkens.
Kutemidlalo ikhulunywe isikhathi lesidze indzaba yekutfutfukisa umdlalo webhola kuleli kanye nekungadlali kahle kwelikhetselo lesive sihlangu semnikati kanye ke nesitsebe samhlekazi emhlanganweni we-Football Association indaba lobanjelwe ehhotela lesibane sami ezulwini. Lo mhlangano beungenelwe ngitotonke etinhlangano letingephansi kwe-Football Association kanye nebalandzeli bemidlalo webhola lapha eveni. Betingako tindzaba teSwati bonkhosi isibahlola imakethe ngesimo selitulo sitawubuya sichubeke nelihlelo ngayindzawo.
Asibizele sinimukele sakuvusela nawo lo sanza kusivulela besivetile ukuthi sidaba sikhulumisana nalabasuka etiko letempilo njengoba nje kubhekile ukuthi itiko letempilo lisukumise lucwaningo olutawubuka ukuthi linganani lizinga lekuthelelana tifo letingathathelwana ema non-communicable diseases nekuthi yini lelebanga letifo litike lifaka ekhatsi ishukela icancer kanye ne-hypertension naletinye litiko libika ukuthi lizinga lemaswati lanaye ishukela liyenyuka litiko-ke lagcina kwenda lolucwaningo ngeminyaka wa 2014 kanti-ke kwenda lolucwaningo kumele ukuthi kwentiwe njalo eminyakeni lengangeminyaka lesihlanu lisebentike tetempilo titawucala tiphume evikini lelitako kutivakashela emakhaya lapha eveni tende lona lolucwaningo lolu. I'm joined by NCD coordinator itiko letempilo Raymond Shabangu tuchazela kabani nje ngalomsebenzi lobalekile lapha eveni sikuvusele Shabangu sabanga ukuthi ubenathi lomhla ekseni sifuna ukuva kakhulu kade ukuthi vele ngimaphi ama common types of ama NCDs. I think someone mentioned nje ukuthi kunaboshukela nabo hypertension ngitiphi letinye nje mhlambe tifo lesingathi vele tibalekile tihamba impilo lapha eveni.
Asibonge lungelele sokusele namsakati event Eswatini sibonga uNkulunkulu kusilondoloda so ngcono lungelele lokuthi siyadata naletifo ya sesingarecruiter ngale ya tifo letingathathelwana noma NCDs la lagijima embili nje emhlabeni onke jikelele angu4 kakhulu kufaka ekhathi letifo tenhliziyo la khona tawungena khazi labo stroke nabo heart attack nabo high lele vamile kakhulu event Eswatini bese ke kuba netifo tabo mdlavuza nato tinengi o cancer kube nale sifo sashukela nato tehlukahlukane ngoba sikhona le shukela ubantwana ukhona ke lakulabadzala ukhona nakulabatethwele thola ukuthi ngaleso sikhathi atethwele kubonakala shukela kwendeke usinasakhulekile abelekile bese uyanyamalala kulomunye achubeke lo shukela sekufuna simfake kulashweni bese ke kuba naletifo lethambisana nekuphefumula dithinze emaphaphu ufake ekhathi bo asthma digijima embili emhlabeni kanti avenda seswatini sithola ukuthi sifo sashukela naletifo tenhliziyo kufaka ekhathi high ngito letiphakeme ngelizinga lelisedulu kakhulu.
Ingabe nansenda mhlambe luphenyo lwenu licwaningo lwenu kubangwa yini lokho kambe ngabe kudlela sekudlako kuba yini nje kahle kahle mhlambe lenekutfole ukuthi kubanga netifo leti
imbangela yale tifo leti siye sithi pheceleti i-lifestyle lendlela lesiphila ngayo ngiko sigcizelela ukuthi nasingachinja indlela lesiphila ngayo ungathola ukuthi izinga laletifo lingehla linciphe nalabo lasebanato ungathola ukuthi kulawuleka kwaletifo dithinzibaliswe kuba lula kakhulu labanye ngendeka bangathi nginemithi lokubanga letifo nje kungu4 lokwenda ukuthi tonke letifo lengitibalile tonke tikhaceka kulo kuletimbangela leti uthola ukuthi kungadli kahle kudla lokusezingeni letempilo kungashumisa umtimba kusebenzisa tidzakamiswa lekufaka tshwala neligwayi nje ithobakho noma ngabe ulisebenzisa kanjani neligwayi mhlawumbe uyalibhema ngekuthi ulishise noma leli lemakhala ulifaka kudiphi tindzawo temtimba usuke umuntu losebenzisa ithobakho utibeke emathubeni ekuthi ube naletifo leti
lokusho kahle kahle vele kumele ukuthi sidla kahle sinatha amanti sivocavoca umtimba kutozama kuvikela tona itifo leti
sigweme etshwala sigweme kusebenzisa ligwayi.
Okay, so bengifundzela nanye report nje babashaba ukuthi eNigeria i-high noma hypertension affecta kakhulu 25 to 48% yebamfu labadzala ngabe lapha eSwatini siyabona indoko kwendeka vele nalapha ukuthi lelizinga lithi ngathi lisedulu
lisedulu lelizinga nasibuka ngalokuthi vele kuba nalemithelela lehlukene lokukhula nje kwemuntu umtimba uyaguga nalemithambo yengadi iyaguga uthola ukuthi vele ngaleyo ndlela uthola ukuthi high seyikanekisa kakhulu kulabantu labadzala kanalabancane uyabona ukuthi vele nyalo sebanenge lesibathola bana letifo letifaka khathi high ngikwitolo besithi kubonakala kusifo sebantu labadzala kancha nalabancane sebanenge ngenxa letinto lesitidlako nalendlela lesiphila ngayo labancane nje bo 25 years bo 22 23 yes banayo le hypertension lesifo se high
Okay.
kanjalo nala kushukela
Nashukela naye nasebamfaneni nakhona.
kunjalo
Lo la kulaba mfana mhlambe ngileyo ngicala from what age nje? Kuvame from what age?
la kulabantwana lokubhlungu ukuthi uthola ukuthi lo mntwana uyadalwa anaye kuphude nalokubonakala kwekuthuna lesifo sashukela lo type 1 esikhathini esiningi ngoba lo type 1 kuba kwekuthi lo mtimba wakhe lelibenze lakhe alikhona inhlobo kukhicita leli sithi phecelezi insulin lokutawenda ukuthi lo shukela athi nzibaliseke la mtimbeni thola usishukela sohlala uphakeme kuphude nalokubonakala ngiko ke sigcine lo mntwana simfake emjoveni weinsulin phose ajove impilo yakhe yonke.
Okay, kubuda nje shaba ngokuthi ezinisasebenza nje ezilitiko nibugoleka le data lena kube yini nje ma challenges kanye nama achievements nje as a Minister of Health kuzama nje ukugoleka yona i-data eman communicable diseases lapha even.
Sisangena kulo msebenzi lona wekufuna le data noma ke lokutasitshela ukuthi sikuphi nyalo sibukile lokuthi sisahamba side kahle i-data lokuthi sikuphi simephi lesitawukwenda sikususe laphi sekudzala kakhulu lesinako njengoba ushito ukuthi sagcina 2014 akusasiko lesiva kusikhulumisa kwekuthi vele sithombe lesingiso sethu bambamba sesimane sikumemede nje sisho ukuthi sigcine sila bangaka labanje labane natitintho natlet babeka engodini exibabe netifo letingathathelwana lokhambe embili ngiloku 2014 nje besibukile ukuthi lokhambe embili lokubabeka engodini bantu lendlela labadla ngayo lokhambe embili ngenyalo sesifuna kubuka ukuthi asesibuyele ngoba sesithethe isikhathi lesithi bekufanele ukuthi ngasabuyela kadzeni kuyowenda lelicwaningo phindze sibuke kepha ke ngenxa yetifo letinye letichamkile dasibambelela bo covid bekungasilula ukuthi besingaphuma nje sihambe ngaleyo ndlela into disiphazamisile kepha nyalo sabothi sekungaphumeka siyabuka lokuthi sekungasita nasingenda licwaningo lelisha sibuke lokuthi letimbangela taletifo letingathathelwana kubantu tisabalele kanjani ditholakala kubantu laba kanjani sibuka besifazane sibuka besilisa neminyaka yabo ukuthi bangaka sitawubeseke sithi nase sekukhulumisa sekuhluta egcineni kusinike lokho ukuthi bantu labasukela kunaminyaka nangu kuya kunangu ngibo labana natitintho nati letibabeke engodini exibabe naletifo letingathathelwana labanye baphila nato letifo letingathathelwana ngilabangaka labenta naku nanaku lokubabeke engodini yekuthola letifo letingathathelwana bangaka kuvame kutholakala kunaba abantu nabo lokho ke sekutasita lokho ukuthi kusinike umgubudla wekuthi silisita njani ngelive labantu laba sibathola njani sikhona njani kufinyelela kibo sikhulume nabo ngiphi indlela lesingakhuluma ngayo nabo basive ngoba abantu bayihlukana nangiyokhuluma nje nalabasebenta etincolweni tekuthuza kwehlukile kufuna ngakho indlela yokukhuluma nabo ukuze sivane ngaleyo ndlela so kukunengi lokutasi niketa indlela lekhanyako nasitawuhamba nje nyalo sendele licwaningo kahle emimangweni.
Yeah, kule survey nitawuvakashela emakhaya kuphela noma mhlambe ndawufika nasemsebenzini kude ndawuthola kahle vele le data lengiyo kutawondeka kanjani nje?
Kutawukhomba lihambo sisi esikhathini sengisitawuya vele lemakhaya la labantu bakhona khona singene ngoba labanye vele kubita kwekuthi sivukele ekseni bathi nabavuka nje sibe sihlola shukela engadini sisebenzise lo shukela wasekuseni so kuyasibita vele ukuthi sifikelele emakhaya laba semsebenzini thola ukuthi sebadlile sebayende lokho nalokho sebahambile bagijimela emabhasi kwekhamba konke lokho kanti lesitamthola savuka kutabalula simthole akahle asanza kusuka ekuphumuleni kwakhe
wona phindeni bahlole boshukela konke
lokuningi vele sabe sikuhlole ekhaya siphethe imishini lethe caca basezingeni lesedulu sihlole shukela sihloke high phinde sihlole emafutha engadini ukuthi anganale sithi phecelezi total cholesterol.
Okay, so kuyendeka yini babeshaba ngokuthi vele nje niphume ne-Ministry of Health nihambe niyofundzisa service amaswadi emimangweni ngato dona netifo leti ngaphambi nje ukuthi nende le survey lena banalo inlwadi vele ukuthi kunemvelo ekuthiwa ngishukela kune-cancer kune-hypertension nani
sisiyaphuma kakhulu msakathi kuya emakhaya kuya emimangweni sifike ecathatha sende emakhambeni sifundzise phindze futhi sibapopole lesifike kibo nalokuthi la emisakatweni siyazama kuvela sifundzise nakhona siyaphuma kakhulu kuya isiveni nyalo asisekho vele lesikhathi sekumela labantu ukuthi bede kithi emtholampilo siyadama lokuthi siye kibo mhlambe ke kube kubakhuthatha kusilokunye lokudzinga ukuchubeka ukuthi kunakekelwe umuntu akusukumele aye emtholampilo kepha noma enjalo nje siyakhuthata ukuthi eMaswati akusukumele kuyodihlola kumgcoka kakhulu.
Ngifuna sibele emuva nje kule ndzaba yashukela njengoba ushido nje ukuthi vele nguye lohamba impili linani labantu labanayo ishukela lapha eveni kwangathi lisedulu kubuka ke mhlawumbe lama symptoms ukuthi vele uma ngabe kunemufulo tisolako ukuthi kwangathi unashukela yini timpawu leti early langacala ukuthi bona leti tamphocelela ukuthi aye emtholampilo.
Lokuthi impawu la kushukela isikhathi sinesinenge uthola ukuthi umuntu utawuba nekubika kwekuthi womele mandi futhi uyanatha angakholwa nalamanti achamele futhi kaneng kuyochitha emanti alambele futhi kwekuthi udla kaneng nasemtimbeni uyehla nesensikhathi uthola ukuthi umuntu uyatsinwa atsinwe lidi umtimba wakhe nje uva utsiniwe isikhathi lesinenge sekukodwa ke la khona uthola ukuthi sekuba nginakulesithi ma recurrent infections kancane kancane sone mathumba edinzaweni emtimbeni kancane kancane ayalashwa ayabuya phinze kanjalo lo munye uthola ukuthi la mehlo akhe asabuka lithuthuva akasakhona ukubona kahle uthola ukuthi ke lapho shukela usho ukuthi sowuhambe siganyana lokuthi nje sekuthinzeka emehlo ngoba uyawathanza phela emehlo shukela nale indzaba yemizwa ke ukuthi imizwa seyiyathinzeka ngoba iyalimala lemizwa nangabe shukela uhlala aphakeme amkhulu thola ukuthi umuntu noma asalimala silonza sakhe asafuni lokutipholela kahle sekuhambe lichi lapho kepha nje lokubonakala lula lothomele lamanda achamele futhi alambe kakhulu adle kanengi abe nasemtimbeni edla kuba lula lokubona ukuthi ayingathi khona lokungalungi kahle sekunekthina thina emtimbeni.
So lama symptoms ayafana nemfana same symptoms nje akukhathale ukuthi unangakho
angafana kepha lokuhlupha ukuthi umntwana angeke akhulume lokunye kwakho uthola ukuthi ngiko sebashayela esikolweni bathi umntwana uwile sibathe siyabuka umntwana uyisweni ngikhathi kuyawubonakala esibhedlela nangabe kusheshe kwavuleka amehlo ukuthi hayi asesithole shukela la kulomntwana mhlambe nasibuka ekhaya ukuthi ukhona enloke wabana shukela sibuka lesipheceleti family history sesigcine lokunye siyakuthola lokuthi hayi kungenzeka lo mntwana unayishukela ngoba kukhona liqhumano emndenini wakhe ukuthi bakhona labadzala laba ke baba nashukela.
Okay, so le survey niyaqala niyaphuma nivakashela emakhaya kusukela next week ingabe vele mhlambe training yalabo labatabe bachuba lo liphenyo lolicwaningo litawuba nini yona?
Bayaqeqeshwa nje lokungikhuluma nyalo baqala namuhla leliviki lonke kuze kube ngilesihlanu batabe baqeqeshwa labatabe benda lelicwaningo bangibona bahamba le kubantu bakhulumisana nabo bathatha yonke lemininingwane phindze futhi babapopola kulokunye kwakho sive nje sitabe sitakala semakhaya lesinye labafike khona ngoba utaba umuntu athola yonke imininingwane ngekuphila kwakhe abhotsholwa lakhaya anikwe umphumela lakhaya phindze elulekwe alakhaya sengilapho mhlambe lomnye kungathiwa kasukume afike esibhedlela ngoba sekutholakele nako batabe basitakala kakhulu bantu singakhuthatha nje ukuthi babamukele bedempilo basata ufike emakhaya kuleliviki lelitako sukela ngemsombuluko kwanyalo basaqeqeshwa kusukela namhla kuya kulesihlanu lelivitako ke bayatheleka emimangweni.
Yeah, itawusita kanganani nje shabangu le data lena ukuthi live libe nayo kubuka nje ukuthi nagcina kuyenda le survey 2014 ingabe vele mhlambe senisalele emuva kanganani nje nasibuka lamanye amavela nale data lena?
Sisemuvana kakhulu sisibathi nje ngekubuka ukuthi sesivele sikiyo nyalo angikholwa ukuthi khona lokungasiphazamisa ukuthi sigcine silimisa lelicwaningo sikiyo nyalo siyathemba ukuthi nalaba sembili kithi sesivele sibakhanzile ngoba nathi simasinyane sidabe sihluta lelicwaningo lemininingwane yonke siphuma naloku sikhulumisa ukuthi sikuphinyalo sisuka la sibhekapi lokutasita khona ngale mininingwane lesitayithola la talisita litiko ukuthi lati ukuthi ngetifo letingathathelwana sisuka ke lana sibhekapi tinsita lesitidingako tinganani ukuthi siyephi kubobani lesibathola baphila nani basengodini yekuhlaselwa yini ngoba tinto leti babeke engodini ngutiphi ngunati nanati litasita kakhulu lecwaningo litasivula emehlo angeke nje siphele ukuphutsata lapha nalapha sivuke ekseni siphutsate sitabe sate ukuthi kunelihlobo lwebantu lelisuka kunamnyaka nangu lite kunamnyaka nangu lelihlushwa nginatinto nati lekungenteka libe sengodini yetifo letingathathelwana nini bese siyaliphuthuma sibuke netinsita ukuthi lesitibeka indzaweni nahulumende lakuhlelako akhona kubeka endzaweni ukuthi ngiyakudzinga nakungana sikhathi nadi ukuze ngifike kubantu bami basitakale Eswatini ngoba lokhu umcoka ukuthi sitivikelele tifo sitivikela ngithi sibone ukuthi nguphi lokubabeka engodini bese sithi la batholakala banato sikhone ukuthinzibalisa lesikutholile lapho sitabe sisebenza umsebenzi lomuhle silivela kangwane
kona nathi ke nato leti lengasathelana babashabange kepha atikavami kepha ingodi nato ingabe ngitiphi leto lapha even
leti ngathathelwana
but leti ngakavami kakhulu kundlela boshukela nabo cancer
tikhona leti ngakavami nato tibe ingodi nawo nasibuka atikibonakala itiphakama angibekise nje njengabo asthma asifakali sikhuluma ngeasthma kanti lo muntu nakede lokutamsida imbambi asthma la khona angavela sishiye emhlabeni kude into lebhlungu njengengakhona nje kuphefumula kungakhona ukuphefumula kusho kuma kwempilo lapho uyacima lo muntu so ingodi kakhulu asthma ngekusikuthatha ukuthi bantu lakuvaka umuntu ukuthi yathi nangithi man angikhona ukuphefumula kahle kuyachinja ukuphefumula kwami ngathi nginekucinana kumcoka lokuvela emtholampilo ukuthi sitokhona kubuka sikale nalokuphefumula kwakho sitokhona kusho ukuthi ayi wena vele emaphapha akho akasiyo la kusebentela kahle ngibeka kubunaso lesifo seasthma sesiyakhona ukuthi sikunike lokutawuhlala nako ukuthi nakuqala nako uthi side nganako kukhona kwekuvikela kwethi asthma ingakubambi kukhona kwekuthi nase ikubambile utikhulula kanjani kuloku ukuthi iseyikubambile ingodi kakhulu asthma sithule kakhulu ngayo kepha nje ngiyathemba ukuthi sidalifaka ligalelo sikhulume kakhulu
yeah so nasibuka nje mhlambe nanibuka nje lezinga lebantu labavelako lemitfolambilo ngoba siyakhumula ukuthi vele leyo yimfelo nikuthatha nikugcutela ukuthi abede abantu abavele badoda ihlola simo sabo sempilo kuyenteka yini lokho avuke nje ayesibhedlela into hlola sugar into check high into ihlola nje simo sami sempilo ngabe niyakubona yini lokho kunyuka nzinga kwalo
angikhulume liciniso ngoba ngimfundisi lungelele la sibabona khona ngilesikhathi esiphumile siye lemimangweni balishayele line vele babe selayinini ukuthi utoti hlola lo muntu umbone nalokho akaguli lemitholampilo kusekuncane lokubona umuntu lode nje uthi athi utohlola kusekuncane kakhulu sisive sase-Afrika lesikholelwa ngazuthi akube buhlungu angibonakale ngehluleka kwenta lokuthide lebengikhona kwenda itolo tokhomba ukuthi ngiyagula ngize ngikhipha imali ngigibele ngiye emtholampilo bakholelwa lokho abantu abakholelwa nje lokuthi hey umnyaka usaqala asengiyotihlola ngithi service njengemotolo kwekuthi ngoba imoto uyiservice ihamba uva ukuthi ngisakhona kuhamba but uthi ngoba sekushaya isikhathi lowashi lithi akuyochinjwa into letithide tihlolwe uyahamba uyiservice abantu abakholelwa kuloko singakhuthatha nje ukuthi bakusukumele abantu nalokuthi ke mhlambe nathi sithi sebenditete empilo lungelele kugcine kulukhuni lokugijimela umuntu lothi utohlola ngenxa yokuthi labanengi abakahloli ngesikhathi bede sebagula lamalayini abantu labagulako abamathe kakhulu sesigcine nathi sesivala engcondweni ngazuthi ungcono kunaka nangilogulako kuya kunangilothi utohlola nje kani umqoka kakhulu uthethe isinyathelo lesihle kakhulu lothi asengiyohlola ngisho ngingaguli
yeah kugcina nje Shabang kuvela ukuthi kule survey next week T70 titawuphuma tonke kanye noma mhlambe ndawucala esifundzeni nihambe ngesifundza
kutawuhanjwa ngesigaba lungelele konke kufuna kwenteke ngendlela lesithi face approach ngesigaba kutokhona kubonakala lokho ukuthi sisuka kuphi inyalo sikuphi kepha nje lengingakusho ukuthi bonke la kufanele ukuthi baphume bayaceceshwa batawuphuma kuleli viki basezingeni lelilungele ukuthi batawukhona kuyokhulumisana nemaswati bathatha imininingwane lefanele phindze futhi babapopole stoba nemininingwane ekugcineni lephefumulako lesitawusina sihluta isitshele lokunenge ngelive laseSwatini ukuthi limephi ngetindzaba tetifo letingatsatselwana.
Ya ngalokho sibugebengu vele sebuvamile kulamalanga kokugcina nje Shabangu ingabe sive sitawubona ngani ukuthi lona vele usebenzela litiko vele badondalo liphenya.
Sibonge kakhulu ngilele kutawuba khona lokukhombisa ukuthi labantu laba betisebenza itetempilo emagama abo neticebhezane kutawuba khona lokubakhombisa nje ukuthi cha laba vele betisebenza itetempilo nalela bayakhona lemimango labaphethe lemimango batawuthola lo mlayito lokuthi kutawuba netimoto letikasole lethamba netsebenza itetempilo letingenela emakhaya sicela batemukele labo baholi bemimango ke bese batisa lesive bonke kuya phasi bakhona bobucopho emitholampilo kunemakomiti lesithi ma health committees atakuthola lokho akumikise lemiphakathini esiveni sive sigcine sathi nje sibagatsile sigcine sathi ukuthi kutawuqhamuka abantu laba kanje nabo batikhombise ukuthi lekuthiwa bangiko basho nganako kubonakala kubese baleni bese kuyasetshenzwa.
Okay, no ngiyavala sibanga isikhathi sakho baba Shabangu mbukeliso otivele ukuthi this week kuqala ke training yalabo tabe bendalo lucwaningo bese kuthi next week siyaqala thi 70 tempilo diyaphuma deyovakashela sive kwenda lona lolu cwaningo sibahlothe emakethe sithabe sicubene hlelo.
Level up your breakfast game this year with our delicious and convenient back-to-school breakfast hampers from Mbiveni, such as the penning hamper for 128 emalangeni and 99 cents, instrumental hamper for only 320 emalangeni, and the ruling hamper for 569 emalangeni and 99 cents. Head over to any Mbiveni meat market store today. Mbiveni, making meal times special.
What do you think the best part of traveling is? Is it the food, or is it the conversation, or is it the sights and sound? If you're ready to explore, we are ready to show you the best way how. We'll give you access to the best luxury getaway sites in the Kingdom of Eswatini, and of course show you vacation sites that suit your budget, because you do not need a lot of money to actually have a great time. Join us on the next adventure on Buhlebetfu, only on Eswatini TV.
Welcome back. So lobula Kusile breakfast show siyakuvusela lo sanza kusivulela. It's 5 minutes before 7 o'clock. Sicatha nje ukukhulumisana na NCD coordinator kutabeke kuna survey letawuqala evikini lelitako labe tabe bayenda kungena baphuma emangweni kuhlola ukuthi ingabe lizinga letifo letingathelelwana tinganani lapha eveni. I think lokuvelele nje kule interview indzabeke ukuthi sifo sashukela ngiso lesisahamba embili lapha eveni abantu abaningi lapha eveni banaso lesifo akusiboke abantu labadzala kuphela kepha nabo bantwana banaso lesifo ukhulumile nje ngetimpawu letithite lapha babeshabangu aveta nje ukuthi kubalekile ukuthi mangabe kukhona lokuvako kwangathi awuphilile kahle emtimbeni kumcoka ukuthi ushone khona emtholampilo ukuthi utothola kulapheka masinyane kungaze kwanze ukuthi sekuhambe umgamu lomude sifo sesihamba umgamu lomude bese awusakhoni ukuthi lapha uvetile nje sifiso nenza ukuthi likhona nato letinye tifo letingathathelwana leti ngakavami njengalabo boshukela nabo cancer nabo hypertension okufa iasthma so nakhona ucelile ukuthi vele sive sizicaphele tonke letifo leti sikhona ukuthi silashwe masinyane.
I think Lungelele, for me my takeaway is kuthi kulula kangakanani ukuthi singadivikela ekutheni sibe nato le tifo etingathathelwana lungelele nawubuka letinto lathi kufuna ukuthi stende ukuze siphephe ukuthi sidle kudla lokunemaseko lamathathu sitiphathe kahle sitivocavoce lokuyinto nje lothatha sinqumo kuyo singanathi tshwala singabhemi ligwayi sithi sikugweme kakhulu lokho and ngiyabona nje kulesimo semnotho lesikuso ukuthi nangabe wena uphe khona kuthenga tshwala neligwayi ayisho ukuthi nemali lana lesikhathi lesikuso nyalo angiunderstand ukuthi abantu bawathatha njalo lama decisions lawa ngalelizinga la khona bangafika esigabeni lapho khona bagula khona ngicabanga ukuthi kufuna kube lula ukuthi nabasiyala ngale dinto lethu sisheshe sikulalele
ukhuluma ngeligwayi nje Mnguni kulamalanga vele solo kukhulunywa nenzaba yana ligwayi nalo lo ihabli leseyivame kakhulu kwamhlabasha nalo litiko nje solo liyachubeka liyasha lokusivele ingodi kakhulu kule habli ngidlula lona leligwayi so
yimela basolo bayibhema ngana lokungathi kuyi flash drive nakho faka lamakhikini nalo ngikwathi kuyini lokho but nje essentially lokubhema sisibonile nesikhulu lapha kahlathi sibonile indzaba ngiyani labe kayibika lapha ukuthi sekunetigila mkhiba lapha ledilima ligwayi iphindze tilibheme iphindze tilithengise yabona ukuthi sevele sekuyibusiness nje vele ekugcineni kwakonke it's a business ye distraction kakhulu etimpilweni kude lokumcoka kwenqa ihealth yemuntu indzaba lethi ngithi bengisho isibayende ukuthi impilo unayinye nabasashukumisa nenzaba ukuthi nasebedlela akulungena insala besolo ikhona so I think vele bekuyinkulumo lemcoka kakhulu lungelele le sisive seMaswati kufuna ukuthi konke lasiyale kuko umbhele sikulalela
kanjalo mbukeli isurvey yaqala nje litiko licelile ukuthi sive seMaswati sebemukele labo labasuka khona itiko atabe banema IDs la jengisaka ukuthi vele basebenzela lona litiko nibangenise nje bakutokhona kunihlola ukuthi kolekwa le data letsingekile tiko takhona kusebenza
quite interesting nalo ukuthi basaphuma nje bangaphumi bathi tasebabahlanganise bonke kuthiwe sonke asibe aligned ekuthenini sisaya kuyobuta sive lemakhaya konke lesiyakuthatha le data itawubuya ibe idata letawukhona ukuthi lungelele igcine ikhona kusita silive I think you asked a very pertinent question enzabeni ukuthi why is it important for us to have this data ukuthi bese siselele kangakanani emuva silive la kangwane data collection selibona live ukuthi indzaba lishukumisako le tasita kuthuthukisa nje donke inhlangothi siyabonga ukuthi ke nabo betempilo invo laba isukumela edudleni.
It's a minute before 7 o'clock. Let's take a break. Stop in international news.
We at Eswatini Television Authority are committed to observing the Eswatini Communication Commission's Broadcasting Code of Conduct.
Under the code, we are committed to broadcast news that is current, free from hate speech, accurate, balanced, and fair.
From politics to business, health, agriculture, courts, and global news, we bring you the latest updates as they happen, when they happen.
We cover all the sporting codes from the football pitch to the chessboards.
This is Eswatini TV News.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at international news. With the war in Gaza entering its 100th day on Sunday, the World Health Organization has said only 15 of the territory's 36 hospitals still partially functional. According to OCHA, the United Nations Humanitarian Affairs Agency, winter rains have exacerbated the dire humanitarian situation in the Palestinian enclave, where the UN estimates 1.9 million, nearly 85% of the population, have been displaced.
Cradling a dead child, a victim of the latest airstrikes carried out by Israel. Her body joins dozens of others awaiting burial after their home near Rafah was destroyed. Survivors say there is no place to escape Israeli bombs.
I will say 3 and 4 times. Unfortunately, this strike is what comes from the safe zones, which is the US, UK and Germany claim there are. This is the result right here in front of you. The butchered are in front of you in body bags and amounts you cannot carry.
Palestinian officials say hundreds of people have been killed across Gaza in recent days, including in areas where Israel told people to seek refuge. All that's left of this family's home in Rafah is rubble. Residents dig through the debris, hoping to salvage what possessions they can from the destruction.
What did we do wrong? We were just sitting. It's not safe in our homes nor outside. Where can we possibly go?
The injured are taken to Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, but doctors say the current conditions make it difficult to properly treat the patients.
The health system collapsed. The situation inside the emergency room is bad. Most of the medical supplies in the ICU are missing.
Now, almost 100 days since the start of the war, the UN is again calling for an immediate ceasefire.
Sunday marked 100 days since Hamas launched a terrorist attack into southern Israel. The Jewish state responded with a military operation in Gaza that is ongoing. VOA takes a look at the toll the war has taken on the Israeli and Palestinian civilian populations.
It has been 100 days since Hamas fighters launched a terrorist incursion into Israel, killing 1,200 people and kidnapping about 240 others. At least 105 of them have been released since the October 7 incursion, but many are still being held captive, missed by their loved ones.
Prisoned without food, without light, without water, without any inhuman conditions.
Israel's air and ground military operations in Gaza, which aim to destroy the militant group, have killed an estimated 24,000 Palestinians. A large percentage of them women and children, according to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza. More than 85% of Gaza's population of 2.3 million have been displaced. Among them, Heba Bakr, who is 6 months pregnant.
I will have a child. I'm worried about my due date. Where am I going to give birth? How will they treat me when I give birth?
From the Vatican, Pope Francis renewed his calls for peace.
War itself is a crime against humanity. People need peace. The world needs peace.
Demonstrations in Rome, London, and Washington over the weekend also demanded an end to the war. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is not bowing to public pressure.
At this moment, what comes first is to cover the expenses of the war and to allow us to conduct the war in the coming year and complete it, including the elimination of Hamas, including the return of our hostages.
On Saturday, Osama Hamdan, a senior official with Hamas, which is a U.S. designated terror group, said the captives are being taken care of. He also referred to a deal that Israel said it had brokered with Qatar to deliver medicines for the hostages.
We are keen to treat them, but we will treat them with whatever medicine is available that reaches our people. And here we thank our brothers in Qatar who took the initiative to send medicines.
With no end to the conflict in sight, rallygoers in Tel Aviv stood in silence for 100 seconds Sunday, representing the number of days hostages have been held captive. Pauses in civil and commercial activities were also announced by Israel's Labor Union Federation, marking the solemn benchmark in the war.
Nearly 180 prison guards and civil servants had been taken hostage by rioting inmates after President Daniel Noboa launched a military crackdown on criminal groups this week, sparking a deadly confrontation with narco gangs in the South American country. All remaining 136 prison guards and administrative workers who were seized as hostages during prison riots in Ecuador were freed on Saturday night.
It's the news their friends and family have been desperately awaiting. After being held hostage for several days, these guards made their way out of the Esmeraldas prison. They're among 178 prison officials who had been held by inmates since Monday at 7 prisons in Ecuador. All staff have now been released, according to the SNAI Prisons Agency. In a post on social media, President Daniel Noboa celebrated the news.
Congratulations to the patriotic, professional and brave work of the Armed Forces, National Police and the SNAI for achieving the release of the prison security and surveillance body and the administrative staff retained in the prisons.
It comes as the country grapples with a surge in violence waged by drug gangs that saw the on-air storming of a TV station earlier this week. After the apparent jailbreak of Adolfo Macias, leader of one of Ecuador's most notorious drug gangs, Noboa declared a state of emergency. Since then, soldiers and police have been out in force across the country and have arrested hundreds of people.
Lo que se hizo fue un barrido por la zona Yesi, suburbio, las zonas donde tenemos conocimiento que se dedican al expendio de sustancias estupefacientes.
Earlier in the week, Noboa laid out plans for 2 new high-security prisons in an effort to address the country's prison system crisis. Vowing to crack down on drug-related crime and violence, he has also pledged tougher laws and more extraditions of hardened criminals. But the president has a steep hill to climb in the South American country that has become a key transit point for drug trafficking in recent years.
Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa this week classified 22 gangs as terrorist groups and declared a state of war against them. The move followed an armed attack during a live television broadcast in the port city of Guayaquil on Tuesday, during which hooded men took journalists hostage.
Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa has branded 22 gangs as terrorist groups after masked gunmen stormed a television studio during a live newscast in Guayaquil on January 9th. The gunmen seized control of the studio and assaulted journalists in a stunning reflection of the country's escalating violence. The incident appeared to be part of a string of coordinated attacks that unfolded across Ecuador on the same day, including multiple bomb explosions in several parts of the country. Police say at least 10 people were killed in the attacks and several, including police officers, were kidnapped. Businesses and stores closed and people fled to the safety of their homes. On January 8th, one day earlier, Noboa declared a national state of emergency after one of the country's most powerful drug gang leaders, Adolfo Macias alias Fito, escaped from prison over the weekend. Authorities say gunmen have taken at least 170 prison workers hostage. President Noboa spoke about the designation of terror groups on national radio.
Estamos luchando por la paz nacional. Estamos luchando también.
We are fighting for national peace and against terrorist groups, now numbering over 20,000 people who had not been labeled as such. They wanted to be called organized crime groups because it was easier for them. When they are terrorists and we are in a state of conflict and war, other laws apply.
That means the designated terror groups are now military targets. Admiral Jaime Vela, the head of Ecuador's armed forces, announced the first arrests in the military offensive on Wednesday afternoon.
Hemos detenido a 329 terroristas.
We have arrested 329 terrorists. We have rescued 41 hostages. We have killed 5 terrorists. We have engaged 3 terrorist groups. We have recaptured 28 people who had escaped from prison.
Violence has been rising in Ecuador, a once peaceful nation, since local gangs and international cartels turned it into a drug trafficking transit hub, according to authorities. Ecuadorians say they're fed up.
People want peace, security, to be able to go to work in peace. Ecuador lived through chaos this week.
Many favor iron fist measures to get the country back on track.
Bring out the military. Let them defend us, because they have to combat this mafia. Otherwise, we won't make it out of this, and the country will sink.
The Biden administration says it's monitoring the situation, and the U.S. State Department says it will send top law enforcement officials to Ecuador to assist in criminal investigations and intelligence sharing. Admiral Vela says international cooperation will aid Ecuador's mission to end narco violence.
The United States carried out a fresh strike on Saturday on a Houthi rebel target in Yemen, U.S. Central Command said, after the Iran-backed militants warned of further attacks on ships in the Red Sea.
A second day of US-UK strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen. The US Air Force Central Command confirmed that it fired Tomahawk missiles at a Houthi radar site on Saturday morning.
At 3:45 a.m. on January the 13th, US forces conducted a strike against a Houthi radar site in Yemen.
This follows a first wave of US-UK attacks on the Houthis on Thursday, which hit over 60 targets. These satellite images show the aftermath of the strikes on military bases in the port city of Hodeidah, southwestern city Taiz, and northern city of Sada. The Houthi movement's channel Al Masirah TV reported the attack on Saturday on social media.
The American-British enemy targeted the capital Sana'a with several raids.
Since November, the Iranian-backed rebels have repeatedly targeted commercial vessels in the Red Sea with drone and missile attacks as a message of support for Palestinians in Gaza. The US-Britain attacks follow a UN Security Council resolution on Wednesday demanding that the Houthi rebels cease their strikes on commercial ships. The US strikes are backed by allies like Australia, the Netherlands, Bahrain and Canada.
We've put together a group of nations that are going to say that if they continue to act and behave as they do, we'll respond.
Houthi officials from Yemen's foreign ministry have warned of retaliation, saying the US and Britain will have to pay a heavy price for their actions.
Hundreds of thousands of people, some carrying Kalashnikov rifles, massed for a major demonstration in Yemen's rebel-held capital, Sana'a, on Friday after US and UK attacks.
Chanting death to America, death to Israel, hundreds of thousands of protesters gathered in Sana'a to denounce airstrikes carried out by Washington and London on Houthi military targets. Bombings denounced by the group's spokesperson.
As part of its support for continued Israeli crimes in Gaza, the US-British enemy launched a brutal aggression against the Republic of Yemen with 73 raids. This attack will not go unpunished.
For the first time since the start of the war in Gaza, U.S. and British forces struck Houthi arsenals and military sites in Yemen, including the capital, Sana'a. The U.S. president said these actions send a strong message, a view echoed by the British Prime Minister.
We need to send a strong signal that this breach of international law is wrong. People can't act like this with impunity, and that's why, together with allies, we've decided to take this action.
Meanwhile, Iran, the sponsor of the Houthis, denounced the arbitrary action and blatant violation of the sovereignty of Yemen. China has called for restraint, while Russia has accused the U.S. of endangering regional stability.
We strongly condemn these irresponsible actions of the U.S. and its allies. A large-scale military escalation in the Red Sea region could destabilize the entire Middle East.
Since the end of November, the Houthis have carried out nearly 30 attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea. The rebel movement, which controls most of Yemen, claims it's acting in solidarity with Gaza. Now, most major shipping lines are avoiding the area, choosing instead to take a huge detour around Africa, despite increased transport times and costs. In the wake of their strikes, Washington, London, and their allies are again calling for regional de-escalation.
Relations between Jewish and Arab citizens of Israel have become more fraught since the Hamas attack of October 7th and the ensuing war in Gaza. Many Arab citizens say they worry they could be penalized if they speak freely.
Increased confrontations between Jewish and Arab citizens of Israel have exacerbated already existing tensions following the Hamas attack of October 7th and the ensuing war in Gaza. Many Arab citizens, who make up 20% of Israel's population, complain that both Hamas and Israeli politicians from the extremist party of National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir are trying to incite violence between Arabs and Jews inside Israel.
For the last 3 months, Jews and Arabs in Israel are going through polarization process because of the war, and at the same time, we're getting some kind of attempts to pull Arab citizens into confrontations, into the war. We see that Hamas is trying to encourage Arab citizens to be engaged in violent activities, and we see also even ministers such as Minister Ben-Gvir are trying to drag us into some kind of confrontational relationship.
During the last conflict between Israel and Hamas in May 2021, there were riots in mixed Arab-Jewish areas in Israel. So far, tensions have not reached that level this time. But Darausha is concerned that Arab citizens, many of whom have relatives in Gaza, will be penalized and discriminated against if they express empathy for Palestinians suffering in Gaza and the West Bank. Adallah, the Legal Center for Arab Minority Rights in Israel, is currently fighting 120 cases from 33 Israeli academic institutions in which disciplinary procedures against Arab students were initiated because of their posts on social media.
Every Arab citizen that dares to open up their mouth and be honest about their feeling about opposing the war seems that to be met with some kind of radical steps, whether it's arrests or kicking from work or from universities. And at the same time, everyone that speaks about what Hamas has done seems to also be criticized as if he's not a patriot enough for the Palestinians.
Being an Arab in Israel today is complex, says Arab-Israeli Knesset member Mansour Abbas.
There is a moral obligation to show empathy to the victims of October 7th, but also to the civilian resident victims of the war in Gaza. This complexity means we have to choose the right words in the right way and in the right place. We can't ignore people's pain and distress and fears.
Abbas joined War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz on stage at a recent Tel Aviv conference called Shared Society in Emergency Times. The two were coalition partners in the previous centrist Israeli government. Polls show Gantz is favored to become Israel's next prime minister. He praised several Arab citizens of Israel who risked their lives to save Jews on October 7th.
This solidarity exists and showed itself in a time of trouble. Our obligation is to develop it and not let extremists harm it.
But Arab citizens say they worry that tensions with the Jewish majority and increased discrimination against the Arab minority could last long after the war with Hamas is over.
Taiwanese voters swept the ruling Democratic Progressive Party's presidential candidate Lai Ching-te into power on Saturday, strongly rejecting Chinese pressure to spurn him, as China said it would not give up on achieving reunification.
Democratic Progressive Party supporters erupt in joy after hearing their candidate won Taiwan's presidential election. It's an unprecedented third consecutive win for the DPP and also a win for democracy, according to President-elect Lai Ching-te.
Taiwan has told the world that between democracy and authoritarianism, we have chosen to stand on the side of democracy, and that Taiwan will continue to walk side by side with its international allies in democracy.
China has been following the election closely. Beijing claims the self-ruled island and warned after Lai's victory that it won't tolerate any separatist activities. Ahead of the vote, China called the election a choice between war and peace. Chinese officials were rooting for the opposition Taiwan People's Party to win. Its candidate, Ho Yo-yi, campaigned on a platform of closer ties with Beijing. But the party has struggled to attract supporters beyond their core constituency, which is mostly older voters with family and business ties to the mainland.
I personally did not work hard enough, and I regret that I could not achieve political change. I let everyone down.
Despite Lai's presidential win, his party lost its majority in the 113-seat parliament in the legislative elections also held on Saturday, meaning he'll have to work across the aisle to govern. China, seeking the last word, warned that despite the vote, reunification with Taiwan is inevitable.
Iowa Republican voters gather this week to select the delegates they plan to send to their respective parties' national conventions ahead of presidential elections. But this year, Mother Nature may have other plans.
Winter weather whites out parts of Iowa ahead of the 2024 presidential primary season. An extended freeze, along with strong winds and unrelenting snow, could affect voter turnout for the state's first-in-the-nation Republican caucuses, where voters determine which candidates might gain political power and earn their party's nomination for the presidency of the United States. The preliminary path to the presidency has run through Iowa since 1972, but with some forecasters calling for wind chills of minus 43 degrees Celsius, conditions may become life-threatening for those fulfilling their civic duties. The weather has prompted calls to reschedule the meeting slated for Monday.
It's going to be difficult traveling, and so it's better to cancel the event. Not even so much because of the candidate not being able to get there, but because you really don't want to put a lot of people in a way of hazards of driving and slippery and snowy conditions.
The band of brutal weather threatens millions in the U.S. and has even caused the rescheduling of a National Football League playoff game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Buffalo Bills. The host team, the Bills, posted scenes from the field on social media. Meanwhile, the campaign of Republican frontrunner former President Donald Trump canceled all but one in-person rally, opting instead for tele-rallies, meeting with voters at smaller campaign stops, according to ABC News. Iowa's Des Moines Register reports Trump holds a commanding lead of 48% among likely Republican caucus goers, so severe weather probably won't affect him. It's a different story for Trump's leading challengers, like former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, who served as Trump's UN ambassador. Haley currently polls at around 20%, up 4 points from December, according to the Des Moines Register. Once thought to be Trump's likeliest challenger for the nomination, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis continues dropping in the polls, now registering at 16%, according to the local publication. No other Republican candidate breaks into double-digit approval, with biotech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy coming closest at 8%, again, according to the Des Moines Register. Ahead of a 3-day weekend with a federal holiday marking the birthday of slain civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., some Iowans say they're happy for something to do, with or without politics.
There's not as much to do in the winter, especially, but you can make your own fun, like out here sledding with your friends, whatever. So it's a great time.
The head of the Iowa Republican Party told the Daily Mail that only a massive national disaster would prompt rescheduling of Monday's Iowa caucuses, citing clear skies for the Republican Party.
Concerns are rising over whether Pakistan's February 8 general elections will be free and fair as challenges mount for the political party of former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Adding to the uncertainty are calls to delay elections and deteriorating security.
Nearly 127 million Pakistanis are registered to vote in the February 8 general elections. But former Prime Minister Imran Khan, the country's most popular leader according to opinion polls, will not be on the ballot. He's in jail on corruption charges and disqualified from running for office. His party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf or PTI, is struggling to campaign freely in public and online.
The most important is the most of the leadership is in hiding. It is actually being arrested. Our political leaders and supporters are actually being harassed. Whosoever actually comes and supports PTI, he is being harassed. The top leadership's nominations form have been rejected.
PTI has been facing a military-backed crackdown since last May. when the former premier's supporters stormed sensitive sites to protest his arrest. Calling PTI's pre-election troubles a manipulation of the electoral landscape, the country's Independent Human Rights Commission has said elections will not be fair, free or credible. Some believe it's too soon to reject the entire electoral process as unfair.
Keeping one political party out of the election context for one reason or the other will raise many questions on the legitimacy of the exercise. But we can only comment on it after the election process is completed.
Three-time ousted former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's party is seen as the establishment's favorite. Like Khan now, Sharif was disqualified from running for parliament before the 2018 vote over corruption charges. He had also fallen out of favor with the powerful military. Observers say seeking the military support to come to power has weakened all political parties and eroded voters' faith in elections. Sharif's close aide Khwaja Asif agrees.
We are all culpable in this tragedy that we are facing. We have to find a solution, and the best way is to find that solution after this election.
But uncertainty looms over whether the February vote will happen at all. The general elections have already been delayed nearly 3 months, and some politicians are pushing to delay the polls a few months more, citing security threats and a harsh winter in parts of the country. The campaign season also lacks its usual hype.
Uncertainty that may lead to low turnout is a red flag.
Pakistan's caretaker government says elections will happen as scheduled, but that it's up to the Independent Election Commission to ensure the vote is free and fair.
We cannot be monitoring Election Commission of Pakistan. It's not our job. We are there to facilitate in every manner that they may need our help. Financial, administrative, and security. That we will continue to provide.
With PTI losing its iconic election symbol, the bat, on Saturday night, its candidates will now have to run as independent.
28 minutes after 7, we've come to the end of our international news. Thank you for staying with us. Let's take a break and leave you with the weather.
You may have heard about contaminated syrup harming children and even causing death in some cases. There have been reports about falsified diabetes and weight loss treatments. We're going to talk about substandard and falsified medical products today. How can you protect yourself, and how does WHO keep you safe from these products? Here to talk about it is Pernet Bordillo Esteve. Welcome, Pernet. Pernet, talk to us about falsified and substandard medical products. What do we mean by these terms?
Thank you, Vismita. So a substandard product is one that has basically lost its attributes of quality, perhaps through degradation. It's become out of specification. A falsified product is one that deliberately misrepresents its composition, identity, or source. There is an intent to deceive. And both substandard and falsified medical products may contain the wrong active ingredients. They might have been manufactured in unsanitary conditions. They will most likely not treat you for the condition for which they were intended. And sometimes they can even be toxic, as in the case of the contaminated syrups that you've just mentioned. Both substandard and falsified medical products harm patients, and there's a wide range of socioeconomic and public health impact attached to these.
So Pernet, explain to us, how are these medical products allowed to exist and circulate, and how do they actually reach people, and how can people protect themselves?
So they're not supposed to be allowed to exist. Falsified medical products are by definition very difficult to detect. They can be almost similar or identical to the original or the genuine product. And a substandard product often requires laboratory analysis to be identified as such. There are three major forces that drive the existence of substandard and falsified medical products. The first is constrained access. This means, is the product available? For example, a shortage. Of acceptability. Can you accept this product? And affordability. Can you afford to pay for it? The other driving forces are technical capacity. Is there the capacity to detect the product?
So you're talking about capacity of a country.
This is about being able to do the laboratory testing to identify these products. And once you have identified it, you have got to be able to report it, to share the information. And that requires quite a lot of technical capacity. And the third major driving force is poor governance. This includes corruption, unethical practices, and weak administrative structures. So you don't need all three driving forces to converge for substandard and falsified medical products to exist. A single one is enough, but populations where these forces converge are the most vulnerable.
So how can we all protect ourselves?
Well, people need to have access to safe and quality medical products. And that's why WHO works closely with national regulatory authorities, those very institutions who are the best place to safeguard the public from these substandard and falsified medical products.
So, Pernette, once WHO receives an alert about a falsified or substandard medicine or medical product, what happens next?
So as soon as we receive a report in the WHO Global Surveillance and Monitoring System, the first thing that we do is to validate the information. Then we identify and assess the risks, and that allows us to determine what are the immediate actions that are needed to protect public health. We work with a wide network of public authorities and experts to understand the nature and the scope of the danger. We'll provide technical assistance to countries who are dealing with the incident, and when necessary, we'll communicate about the risk, for example, with the WHO Global Medical Product Alerts that you have seen. This is really a very global issue. Our network reports to us all sorts of medicines, antibiotics, cancer medicines, hormones, vaccines. Every single therapeutic category in every single form is affected by this. In the past year, we've spent a lot of time working on the examples that you mentioned earlier, which are the liquid medicines contaminated with antifreeze and also the falsified weight loss diabetes type 2 products. It's very important to report early because a timely report from one country can save lives in another country. Good quality information is what will guarantee effective interventions. So if you or someone that you know suspects to have been exposed to a substandard or a falsified medical product, or if the medicine has not worked as you expected, or if there was an unexpected adverse reaction, please talk to your healthcare professional about it as soon as possible, your doctor, your pharmacist, your community healthcare professional. We all have a role to play when it comes to preventing, detecting and responding to substandard and falsified medical products.
Thank you, Pernette. That was Science in 5 today. Until next time, then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stick with science.
La salle, je vois que la réaction est positive, je n'entends pas d'objection. L'accord de Paris pour le climat est accepté.
December the 12th, 2015 was a pivotal moment. There was a sense of progress, of hope and ambition. The US President Barack Obama said at the time, the Paris Agreement
establishes the enduring framework the world needs to solve the climate crisis.
At its core, the Paris Agreement establishes a pathway to mitigating and adapting to climate change in a fair way. To limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, ideally to 1.5 degrees, the idea was that all countries will cut emissions, but developed countries would move further, faster, and provide finance and technology to developing countries. At the time, it was recognized that ambition was not sufficient to achieve 2C, let alone 1.5C, but that ambition would be raised gradually over time. But is this framework working? To answer this, we need to look at the national emissions targets in the nationally determined contributions, or NDCs as they're called. To do that, we can use the model that we developed with the World Bank called the Climate Policy Assessment Tool, or CPAT. This allows for the quantification of emissions targets and of climate ambition. So here's the good news. Our key finding is that the Paris Agreement is making progress. Since 2015, the NDCs have become more stringent. However, we need to see significantly more mitigation ambition and action in this decade. Specifically, we need to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 25 to 50% below 2019 levels by 2030. But globally, current targets only achieve about an 11% cut in emissions. So how do we close this gap in an equitable way? Our proposal is to have all countries reduce emissions versus business as usual, depending on how wealthy they are. Most countries would then raise their ambition, but high-income countries would cut emissions by more than middle or low-income countries. We can compare country targets to what's needed for different temperature goals. As you can see, there is a lot of variation between countries, but some patterns can be identified. Firstly, very few countries are in the range of about 2C, and no country is currently ambitious enough to achieve 1.5C. High-income countries are generally more ambitious than, say, upper middle-income countries, and as a collective have become much more ambitious since 2015. Secondly, upper middle-income countries have raised their climate ambitions somewhat, but overall are further from what's needed for 2C and 1.5C than high-income, lower middle, and low-income countries. Scaling up climate ambition globally is therefore crucial. But ambition is not nearly enough. Another recommendation we make is to accelerate implementation through complementary agreements between countries. This could include an agreement on minimum carbon prices or other measures with equivalent outcomes. We also need to drastically increase mitigation investment. Global investment in energy needs to increase sixfold by 2030. On flows of finance, developed countries aim to mobilize $100 billion in climate finance to developing countries by 2020, but unfortunately are likely to meet this target late. Lastly, we need much faster development and diffusion of low-carbon technologies such as electric vehicles, heat pumps, green steel, and others. So overall, progress has been made since the 2015 signing of the Paris Agreement. But to mitigate climate change, we need much more ambition and action in this decade. But identifying and quantifying gaps is one thing. Finding the political will to close them is another altogether.
Bonke sasiphindze sinamukele lihlelweni insatheli emsakado etemidlalo Linda Master Dlamini seyivele kayifikile tawuxoxisana nathi ngetemidlalo lesitibonile kule mphela sonto sitawuqala la khaya Master sakumukela nje lihlelweni sibukela ibhola lemnanzi kule mphela sonto nami I had the pleasure ukuthi nje ngiyibukela live lapha eMavu so at least yeah no bengiyibukela Master bengiyibukela but yeah it's just great display of football Master I think loku mnanzi kakhulu ukubona lama emotions etihlwele enta kanje yeah lo lenye team nje ikore lenye ingakhona ikora isiyokora ngasekugcineni nalena lebe seyiwinile ubone kuphela lelo themba lelo but nje it's beautiful football I think more than anything angifuna sicale ngegame ye Highlander Master nayo iMoneni Pirates because what I noticed there like you had said before I think Patizo also highlighted inzaba yekufika kwaPupu ukuthi he has to be instrumental in that team as long as atawukhona kuya ejimini sibonile coach amfaka nge-first half but akayiqali igame ingene as a sub nge-first half nangemambala nangena lunenge lishintshe ngoba usaphocha nakala khathi yeah let's talk about Highlanders. Do we see Highlanders getting back to the old Highlanders lesiyadiko bacompete?
Maningi lama questions sifiso na ubuka indlela iHighlanders ledlala ngayo ema fans embabana Highlanders asaqala kuba frustrated more especially ku game le kanje babana Highlanders versus Moneni nawo yoqalisa one of ama stars akhe benchini and for the second successive game aqala ebenchini naPupu because kungwenyama cup nabadlala nePickspeak Black Swallows wayiqala ebenchini wangena second half emafans besacala kuba frustrated nakangena wayishintsha igame asike emafans eHighlanders yini ungamqalisi adlale awende lomsebenzi bese nasadziniwe second half bese suyamkhokha ikore qala iMorning Pirates kule game le njengoba ngisho ukuthi emafans asacala kuba frustrated uyabona futhi nalama reactions abo ukuthi edele confidence kangako kuye Dumisani Makhanya but igcina ikhonile kubuya yona iMbabane Highlanders yalithola igoli le-equalizer yaphela le game 1-1 vele nje itolo bekulanga lama draws le mavuso because Denver Sundowns Imbabane Swallows nayo idlale i-draw ngicabanga ukuthi lama teams aseMbabane iMbabane Swallows seyidraw ke lena ku league yes4 kulandzelana nangikhumbula kahle tinvoka atsiko athambe kahle nangabe kwenteka kanjalo ngicabanga ukuthi nabo emafans eMbabane Swallows nawo asacala kuba frustrated yes itolo mhlambe lokunye lokube sekunakhuza kakhulu ama emotions after game be Denver nabo be Swallows indlela i-officiating lebeyichubeka ngayo but nje etulu iGreen Mamba iyadlala kusasa idlala neManzini Wanderers so ihlede edulo esicongweni ku13 games ina 27 points Royal Leopard lekhale phasi kule weekend kuNsingizini North Spurs ngamagoli amathathu kulinye ihlede number 2 ina 26 points ngicabanga ukuthi sifiso nawubuka ema teams Royal Leopard idilahlekisele emathuba ekuhlala edulo esicongweni Mbabane Swallows idilahlekisele emathuba ehlala edulo esicongweni so ngicabanga ukuthi madlenya ekhale phasi nayo ku Ilovo kule weekend le kunengi nakhona ngicabanga sizingakhuluma ngako Young Buffaloes iwinile kuManzini Cbets nga 3-1 letibeke ukuthi nayo yenyuke ifike ku 23 points then Ilovo iwinile kumadlenya Ilovo sifiso amase ukuthi since coach Potsotso afikile kule team angiyamati uyamotivate abadlali kakhulu man bekustar asadlala Potsotso Khoza so ufikile kule team uyawubona lo mehluko ukuthi at least ku 5 games badrawe lang 2 uyabona bawina lang 3 then that's
a good record
kakhulu is doing a tremendous job lapha Ilovo Nsingizini North Spurs ba unveil coach nabo kuleli viki lesisuka kulo bawinile against Royal Leopard ngicabanga ukuthi major result kubo Nsingizini North Spurs ukuthi bebangawina ku Royal Leopard so ngicabanga ukuthi overall nawubuka ukuthi cishe onke lama games lokungenani libe khona ligoli lokuyinvo lenhle lokuthi nama neutrals siyajabula nasibona kwendeka kanjalo.
Maybe just to chime in a bit more lapha kuNsingizini Hotspurs mase ngiyafuna siya Swallows kancane again but asiqale la kuNsingizini what we saw last year what is happening for the team a lot of positive changes in terms of sponsorships even the acquisition of lo coach lo ngena and then shinjo lolibukekako they have the most draws ku league Bane Pirates have 8 draws but it looks like after this weekend this performance particularly nje kushaya Leopard 3-1 eshiselweni has been a major boost for them. Do we see nakulokwendekile tinguquko letibe positive for yona Nsingizini tiba cementa vele ekuthenini they are back competing?
I think sifiso nyalo nangibuka nalabadlali lababalethako basayina umdlali ku Denver Sundowns basayina umdlali ku Morning Pirates babuyisa masoso ku Rangers lebeka kulona because bekabhala last year ngicabanga ukuthi lawo ma additions labawentile kuma players then na technical bench I feel like nyalo ke sebalungele ukuthi bangayibamba i-top 4
sure
yes ngiyathi ngikhuluma kakhulu ne-technical bench yakhona last season ngithi hayi man hayi lendlela leni letha ngayo badlali nendlela style but inyalo mase ukuthi ngiyalibona lolushintsho and ngicabanga ukuthi vele nawubuka la baqhamuka khona ukuthi balicembu lelisha kodwa le team vele sebat achievile angeke bezosoba too harsh kubo ba achievile two trophies in 2 seasons ngicabanga ukuthi that's a good job for a new team lefika kwa Premier League so kuwin against Royal Leopard nakhona i team ngicabanga ukuthi one of the strongest team la khona lapha eVeni ngicabanga ukuthi le result leyo inkulu kakhulu.
Babare Swallows versus Denver Sundowns, just briefly, Master. What I saw there's a player lapago Denver Sundowns towards Slachwago, Lala Park midfielder. Beganako kuba frustrated nema defenders akhe kuthi akamniki kahle le bola, but you would see every time nakayitfola he made the best decisions for Denver, and he was really instrumental in kule win yabo itolo. But kumbabane Swallows, Felix Badenhorst again, a composed player, doesn't talk too much, but all the decisions, even the goal that they got, resulted from a pass that he made from Lapa Eswatini, Master. What a player! But Mbabane Swallows, they look like they have what it takes, but somehow it doesn't connect. Kona Mabilis Alapemba doing a great job.
Nawubuka Sifiso imbabane Swallows ngiqale ngale Denver Sundowns yena Hlatshwayo ngicabanga ukuthi i-frustration yakhe kakhulu umdlali bebadlala naye bebathwina naye la ku-midfield uthathwe insinzi not space, so vele ugatha ukuthi the defenders ende lo msebenzi loyo kanzi yena bekayi anchorman. So ngicabanga ukuthi kudibene, but nje siyibonile iDenver Sundowns first half cishe idlala enconywana. Second half ukhuluma ngembabane Swallows, they have Bomabila defense, they have Bo Kingsley, then the midfield nakhona ungagatsa Sifiso ukuthi imbabane Swallows because bayakhona ukuthi banayo advantage yabo Manyisa, banayo advantage yabo Tiger, then ima forwards akhona unanhlanhla Ngwenya, unagadlela, una Felix, una Sandile Hlatshwayo. So ngicabanga ukuthi maningi lama options, but ama-fans embabane Swallows akhala nge-consistent ku-coach ku-certain i-starting 11 sakhe, but solo ude starting 11 sakhe. So ngicabanga ukuthi loko if angakulungisa coach, then the team ingabuya ukuthi khona ukuthi idlale.
Again, to your point, Master, I think lama team asembabane vele anedinking a double coach, because na Highlanders it's the same problem, which what I saw, Highlanders was clearly the better team against Moneni Pirates. That's not about possession in the first half. Clearly better, but Moneni scored the first goal with those few opportunities that they had. You could see the character that they had. This is a better team than us, but and they almost stole that W. But again, Master, I want us to move on to Africa Cup of Nations just briefly. Iqalile, Master, you know, we saw Emma results. For Egypt drew 2-2 the Mozambique. Nigeria 1-1 Equatorial Guinea, which, you know, a lot of people before the game started said Nigeria's coming out with an easy win there. What are sentiments?
AFCON Sifiso yabona leya lonyaka hayi ingilenge. Wathi esikhathini lesendlulile bekuthi nakuqala ama-group stages wathi nje ukuthi Cameroon Samuel Eto'o ngilata uthola khona amagoli amaningi. Didi Dropa kuma-group stages ngilata uthola khona emagoli. Egypt bo trick abatabe batendela nje bo Zidane batabe batendela nje but kube sesekehluka lokho ngicabanga ukuthi nawubuka yes Ivory Coast winile opening ceremony ngale ngemgcibelo ebusuku yawena 2-0 ku Guinea Bissau, but nako lokwenteke itolo Egypt versus Mozambique. Mozambique nakuthiwa uphume ngesemagunvane kuthola i-draw kukhulunywa nge-Egypt. Mozambique ikore kuqala i-Egypt kule game le labanyenti bathi hayi no yona i-Egypt itayiwina le game, but yaseyabuya Mozambique yamshaya 2 quick goals second half yathi 2-1 late in the game. At the time 97 yathola i-penalty yona i-Egypt ya-equalizer Mohamed Salah. So ngicabanga ukuthi vele i-Mozambique le game le they deserve a win. In fact they played better than yona i-Egypt kule game le. Then bese sekuba neGhana nayo, iGhana ne-Cape Verde. Ngiko Sifiso ngithi uyathi if i-Cape Verde itawudominate Ghana, thina ne-Cape Verde bezidlala last year and kudlala kwesihlangu neCape Verde, sihlangu bese nasikubed. In fact saba dominator ku-position more especially second half, but Cape Verde yadominate against Ghana. Lokusho ukuthi thina asikho khashane kakhulu manje, kukhona lento nje leshodwa kukudludwa sihambe siyokhompyutha nayo ema-Giants ase-Africa because Ghana lost ku-Cape Verde Nigeria drew. So uyabona ukuthi tinvo tiyashintsha besikhathile ukuthi bo Osman bo Victor Osman batatendela nje kodwa nje tinva tikahambi ngendlela bebaplanile.
Again, Master, I'm happy you're touching on Inzabeka ukuthi idlala njani Cape Verde, and you're reflecting to how we played against Cape Verde sisihlangu semnikat. And I think for us Silver Semaswati, I think our biggest takeaway from this tournament should really be that. And I think Inzaba indaba lobo solo igcugcutela sayivele iqalile Master umsebenzi uqale ngibonile etinzabeni ukuthi ngumsebenzi osokhona. I think it's happening at the right time. Yes, it is late, but at least better late than never. Usathenza yona Inzaba Cape Verde, mina ngibukana naye Mozambique, le sokole say Egypt, Master. Mozambique is right here, and you look at them on a resource level, even on the players. Now ubuka nje nale lifestyle yebadlali. How are we as Eswatini not playing and competing go AFCON, go high level, if Mozambique and Cape Verde badlala ngaleli zinga leli basokolisa bo Egypt nabo Nigeria?
Okay, Sifiso naku lokwendekako lekumele ukuthi emaswati lamanye into akwadi. Lamave lawa Mozambique inebudlelwane nePortugal. Some of the players bayakhona ukuthi baye kubo Portugal bathole leyo training noma ukuthi bo coach in Mozambique bathole leyo training. Even nase South Africa, because bakhona nje abadlala esikhathi lesizwe South Africa ukhuluma boPelembe 40-year-old, ukhuluma ngaDove lodlalela iChiefs inyalo. So ngicabanga ukuthi sine na usibuka lo sisite umdlalo, okay, umunye umdlalo odlala ku DStv Premiership Justice Figueiredo. So ngicabanga ukuthi lokho kayidlala inzima lenkulu kakhulu ukuthi labadlali asisibambise babe exposed batodlala nalaba lesitathi nazidlala ema qualifiers, nazidlala le AFCON if is qualifier bangakhanzi basele kakhulu. Otherwise iAFCON iqale kahle kakhulu Sifiso. I'm happy ngendlela ema teams, the so-called smaller teams lasanyuse ngayo lizinga lekudlala.
Yeah, Master, just quickly, the English Premier League, we don't have enough time. What a weekend, go English Premier League. Of course, match day 21 of 38 started on a high note. The biggest spectacle, Kevin De Bruyne, obviously making headlines there. And being the star of the show in that game at Sanzakubuya, Master, maybe asicale ngayo Manchester City. That game, seeing Kevin De Bruyne's performance in that game, did we really expect him to shine like this at Sanzakubuya?
What's nakangena Sifiso angena second half ngathi if Kevin De Bruyne akhona kubuya ayishintsha le game le then iCity sengayiniketa le league.
Wow.
Because vele the missing the missing link poor performance ya City this season bekum Kevin De Bruyne 5 months angekho. So ubuyile nyalo wathola igoli wa assista kuyakutshela ukuthi lo mdlalo special. In fact, for me Kevin De Bruyne is up there with the Premier League greatest midfielders of all time.
No doubt.
Ukhuluma ngabo Scholes, Gerrard, Lampard, Vieira is up there. Liverpool solo ihlete khona esicongweni with amaphuzu lang 45, but Manchester City ilandzela ngemuva nga only 2 points bane Aston Villa itilahlekisele chance nayo ukuthi ihlale ngetulu kwe Manchester City. Arsenal ayikadlali itazidlala mhla ka 20 ina 40 points. Then Spurs bezidlala ne Manchester itolo nakhona what a game ledlaliwe magoli sibonile lang 4 lashayiwe. So I'm happy ngendlela nakhona ema teams magoli lashayiwe ngayo kule weekend.
Yeah, Master, Arsenal nje idoubt idlala mhla ka 20 tabedlana naye 14th seeded Crystal Palace on a game where they have to secure that win again to be, you know, babe nayo leyo level of confidence in being contenders this season again. But maybe briefly, Marcus Rashford, I hope you did watch that Manchester game, Master, because he started off and showed flashes of okay, he's going to play really well, even though Nyamchacha, on that first goal led for Lille Manchester, he made a silly mistake like a boxing, and luckily it turned into a goal somehow. But eventually when he scored, he said, I'm silencing the critics.
Yeah. I think frustration is frustration yakhe Rashford over the years. What's in nakafika ku Manchester waskora ku debut yakhe Premier League, waskora ku debut yakhe Champions League, waskora ku debut yakhe eNgilandi. So bamhyper wabelieve ukuthi he's a star. So
I'm sorry to catch you, we ran out of time, but he made really stupid decisions, so to speak, la public game. Bongo sisibona ukuthi inhlelo nasenhlelweni yasibona nekusasa ngisale kahle.
The day you take Christ into your life, you begin to walk in a blessing.
Emaswati masitawushiya simakazi sibukela abanye bonkulunkulu uNkulunkulu utawukhwesha kithi emaswati singamlahli uNkulunkulu
sitomdumisa sisho sithi uyigwele somali
mase ubutholile lobungcwele hlala ungilongcwele
ningesabi nimaswati, this is our season. Nguye idolo, nguye namuhla, nguye nakusasa.
Ngiyamukela umbukelo wehlelo lethi siyakudumisa kumnyaka wa 2024 ngoba sekuJanuary ngempela lasolonke kwemukela nje kulo lomnyaka lomusha umnyaka wa 2024 sibonge uNkulunkulu ukuthi uvumile ukuthi thine nawe singene kulomnyaka wa 2024 na ungabuka emuva ubuke ihlobo ubuke emaceleni utawubona ukuthi labanye abakabi nalomusa lo utholile wena ukuthi uthi namhla ngo2024 ukwatile kumemedo wathi happy new year kungumusa waNkulunkulu siyambonga uNkulunkulu ukuthi usinikele lithuba thina na ukuthi sichubeke